It is getting harder and harder to think of ways to introduce and open up the We Are West Ham podcast week in, week out. I will Pure and back with James Jones as always after West Ham United 0, the worst Everton team for a generation 0. Don't really know what to say. It sort of rumbles on. I'm less angry than I was last week after the Nottingham Forest game, but I don't really know what to say. It's sort of like, as expected, the football was pants. If we can't even beat Everton, the season is still over, and it's hard to be sort of particularly imaginative or positive. I've nothing really from where I find the position our club is in is going to change week on week, even if we'd won on the weekend. I don't particularly, unless it was like 5-0, to be fair. I think it's going to be like this for a few weeks. Fortunately, James Jones, we've had a few messages in from our loyal and wonderful listeners on social media. So they're going to form a large part of the foundation for this week's episode, because I haven't got anything to say, really. You went to the game on the weekend. I fortunately managed to swerve it because I was away for the weekend for my birthday. We could just do a review, actually, of Rye in Sussex, which is like my favourite place in England outside of London. We could just speak about that instead, if you like. But first of all, how are you? How's things? You went to the game on Sunday. How are you feeling about West Ham, your life, everything, really?
My life's a lot better than my feelings towards West Ham at the moment.
Well, that's good. That's a positive.
Yeah, I've only just woken up after Saturday's game, to be fair. It was pretty drab affair, very tepid, very uneventful, barring a couple of late chances. But yeah, I don't know. I don't see. All I wanted really from that game, I think I said it last week, all I wanted was to see some kind of something to cling on to. A little bit of hope, a little bit of a sign that things were heading in the right direction. And instead, the only positive I've got is that we didn't concede a goal, which is great. That was fun.
Yeah, against a terrible Everton team.
Yeah. So I walked out, and that's one of the first things I said was, "Well, at least it was a clean sheet." Kind of everyone looks at me like, "Is that what you got, mate?" So yeah, I don't know. I part of me thought it's not going to be great, but we should still beat this lot because they're like you said, they're not in a good place.
No,
we've got better players. If it's like similar to what it was against United, two teams that just aren't very good. We should still come out on top, and the fact that we didn't, and it just ended 0-0, and it was just a little bit like, is worrying. And you know, what's more worrying are the lines we're getting in the media that the clubs still aren't going to do anything about it, and they're just going to sit by, and David Sullivan's going to honour his contract. And I just feel like this is the perfect opportunity to make a change.
Well, what an about turn that is.
No, I know you say that, but
he's probably been listening to you. That's why he's holding on.
Yeah, I mean,
the vast majority of the fan base think it's time to go. But James Jones on the We Are West Ham podcast, we know we've got some listeners in and among the club, James, in the dressing room and higher up towards boardroom level. We already know that. Perhaps I have been listening to you going, look, James is a voice of reason. He's a reasonable man. He says it's too soon. And even if some of the more vocal parts of the fan base say it's time for Lopetegui to go, James Jones doesn't. So we'll exercise a bit of patience.
Well, no, I mean, I stand by what I said a few weeks ago. So I still thought it was too early. The Forest game for me, and I said it last week, the Forest game for me, like, tipped me over the edge a little bit. I was a bit like, look, that can't happen. You can't go to Nottingham Forest. I don't care what good form they're in, how well they've started the season, or how amazing Chris Wood's been for the last 3 weeks. Like, come on. Like, you can't go to Nottingham Forest, get battered 3-0, and expect everyone to be going, oh, yeah, that was great. Like getting battered by Tottenham and Chelsea and City and Liverpool in the cup. I can take those on the chin because we normally get battered by those teams 9 times out of 10. But getting smashed by Nottingham Forest is up there with us getting smashed by Palace last year and Fulham. Like, it shouldn't happen. So I said it last week. I wanted to see something against Everton to perhaps suggest to me that Forest game maybe was a blip and we're not going to get battered by teams like that. And yeah, okay, we didn't get battered by Everton, but it wasn't great. It was like...
But Forest are better than Everton, aren't they? And we were at home this week.
Forest are better than Everton, but it doesn't make any difference. Like, if you look at the players we've got, it shouldn't be happening. So yeah, that's like my view from last week, where I'd been tipped over the edge a little bit, has only been compounded by the performance and not so much the result against Everton. Like, it's more the performance. It's just a lack of urgency going forward. Some of it at the post towards the end, and then Pickford with a wildy save on from Ings at the death.
That was it was like a 7 out of 10 save that Pickford does every now and then for the cameras that makes you look better.
Maybe. I mean, I have actually seen it back, and it happened right in front of me in real time. And in real time, I went, "That is just outrageous!" Like, he's got absolutely no right to save that.
On the TV, I think there's one in the first half that actually I thought was better. I can't remember who it's from, but someone had a shot, and it like proper bent round a defender, and Pickford had already dived, and he must have actually only seen the ball, like where to put his arms, really, really late. That was, I thought, was a good save.
Yeah.
But yeah, the second half ones, I was a bit like, well, for the telly there.
But yeah, regardless, like he's pulled off a couple of good saves and he saved Everton. But regardless of those 2 or 3 chances, it's nothing. Like, they didn't threaten us. We didn't really threaten them. It felt like 2 teams that were just petrified of losing. And just didn't really want to lose, and as a result, didn't really want to attack with the risk of then losing, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of what it felt like. But yeah, I don't know. I think, if given the situation we're in, then I think now's the time. International break. Go out and change it, Dave. Get it done, mate. Forget the second day. It's not like short or a few bob. Like, just get it done.
David Ornstein from The Athletic this morning, his story, it's Tuesday morning, by the way, thought I'd give ourselves an extra day of grace as it was the international break, and that no one will be chomping at the bit to hear Everton 0, West Ham 0 reaction. So Tuesday morning, David Ornstein from The Athletic, his story saying that, the desire at the West Ham board level to honour contracts as much as possible. But, big scrutiny on Julen Lopetegui. It's like, well, I know how much worse it can get, like, for there to be big scrutiny. Like I was saying, that on the weekend, even if we'd have won that game, barring like a 7-0 demolition where we look like Brazil, like, even for bang average, like, that's an Everton team playing like that should be a game where we win the game, definitely. Without even, and basically the same what happened against Ipswich. I went on TalkSport on Saturday morning on Max Rushton and Charlie Baker's show. It's brilliant, really enjoyed it. And, I was so gloomy, you can imagine what I was like. His first question was, how much pressure is Julen Lopetegui under? And I just said, loads, like loads of pressure. Like what? It's terrible. And just did my, the Will Pugh hymn book of or Will Pugh script of, this is how good it was and how good it has been. This is how pants it is now. And one of the questions was, doesn't seem overly inspiring if you're going to get rid of a manager like that. Albeit that he'd gone a bit stale at the end of last season. If you're going to do that, you need to have a plan going forward for what is going to be either as good or better. And there's been a total shambles since then. And this is exactly the sort of thing I was sort of warning about at the end of last season, when people who wanted Moyes out vociferously were just blind to the fact that it could get any worse. It's like, it can only get better. It's like, It's not necessarily true, and that's what's coming out now. I just want to read out a message from Joe Connell, long-term listener to the We Are West Ham podcast. I see him in the pub before and after a few games every now and then. He sometimes pops up at the Wednesday night football game I play in Hackney every Wednesday, funnily enough. Will, this was, to be fair, this was after the Forest game, right? One of the videos we put out on socials. Alex does a really good job of that, by the way. So follow us on social media at @WeAre_West Ham on Twitter. We Are West Ham Pod on Insta. We're on TikTok as well now, so young and hip. That we've got We Are West Ham Podcast. Search that on TikTok as well. You find all of our little clips of our reviews, our more animated reviews. Joe watched one of them, right? It's after the Forest game, to be fair, but he said, I've just watched the Forest review and agree with everything you say, re Lopetegui failings and the fact we could easily have let Moyes carry on. I think the fans wanted him gone, neglect the fact that the toxicity they projected onto the club with wanting to get rid of Moyes filtered its way down to the squad and management, hence the massive tail off in form towards the end of last season. Now, I don't think I've done a very good job at articulating that on the podcast over the past however many months. I couldn't agree more with that. You're laughing already. Let me read the rest of the message and you can have a right reply. Also think that the Lopetegui was the wrong man argument is a moot point, as many of the Moyes outers hate Sullivan too. Thinking he'd get that appointment right is completely naive. Absolutely gutted at the state of the club right now. I wish the whole fan base took to and supported the best manager of our modern era instead of hounding him out of the club. Sad state of affairs. Also, just quickly, find it funny that people are lauding that second half against Man United when all Lopetegui did was revert back to the Moyes blueprint 4-2-3-1, sit in and hit them on the counter. I mean, you would think I know it sounds like I've written that myself, but I can assure you, I'm just going to show you. That is an actual message from Joe Connell, and it says all of that on my screen, Jonesy. So go and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can watch that yourself. Thoughts, James?
I take great exception to the point he makes about the toxicity feeding its way down to the players towards the end of last season. Like,
how?
It's just not true. It's just not true.
No, why? Because I think he's got an excellent point. So why? Because
there was a reason why we were bang out of form at the back end of last year. It's because the squad wasn't big enough. Because David Moyes was admitted that he'd rather small squads. So therefore, we didn't have the squad to be able to compete on all fronts. It was rubbish because we had no striker. For much
we still haven't,
season.
Yeah.
And we still haven't. The players were knackered, absolutely on their feet, on their knees, and you had the same thing happened in the Europa League season before we won the Conference League.
Yeah.
Our
energy levels ran out in April, didn't they?
Yeah, and we should have
May
finished,
when you need
and that was when everyone was bowing down to the bloke, and rightly so.
No, I big criticism of him as well. Yeah,
that year we finished seventh, got to Europa League semi-final. We probably should have finished in the top six, but didn't.
We didn't win after Lyon away, did we?
I don't.
Wasn't that the last game we won?
I think we won once. Yeah, maybe it was the last game. So to say that the bad form at the back end of last year was down to the fact that the fans wanted David Moyes out, I do not agree with it. I don't think solely.
He hasn't said either one way or the other. But I think you're hard pushed to suggest that's not a little bit true. When the fans and everyone's bouncing, you remember what it was like under Bilic, right? Every week, everyone was in a good mood. You're looking forward to the game, blah, blah, blah. Similar to, different points during Moyes' era as well. And given that we've come off the best first half to a Premier League season we've ever had, and there was still considerable amount of toxicity among some parts of the fan base, you can't diminish that point entirely and suggest that it's not better for the players and the manager to, for it to be a bit more bouncy, particularly when Karen Brady, in an interview I did with her earlier this year, told me that without putting words into David Moyes' mouth, part of the reason, not the sole, but part of the reason he left was because he felt him and his achievements were underappreciated by some sections of the fan base. Like, these things do impact the players and managers, don't they?
Yeah, but I think to put all the blame on the fans, I think...
Now, he hasn't said solely,
fair.
but like some of.
All right, okay. I mean, the fans certainly played their part that night against Leverkusen, where we almost became the first team to beat Leverkusen. And that was slap bang in the middle of a really poor run in the league. Well, the fans
One game,
blame
to be
them.
fair, but
Yeah, but like, you know, but that was in the middle of the fans already going, it's probably time he left. It's probably time he went.
Some of the fans, yeah.
Yeah, and then suddenly we get a night like that and a performance like that, especially for that first 45 minutes. The players stepped up and performed then. So, like, if the fans were a reason why, or one of the reasons why, then we don't get that performance against Leverkusen. We don't.
That's a one-off, isn't it? Like, that's one game out of whatever 25 in the second half of the season, or 20 or whatever.
Yeah, and the rest were pretty rubbish, to be fair. So fans had a reason to be a little bit annoyed. Look, I've said it so many times. I love David Moyes. What the guy gave us, I never ever dreamt of as a West Ham fan. Being there in Prague and witnessing it was, you know, at the peak of my life of supporting West Ham. West Ham. I'll always love the bloke. For me, he's a legend. But I was in the camp that I don't think he can take us any further.
Yeah.
Now, I was on TalkSport on Sunday morning, talking to a friend of the show, Natalie Sawyer.
Yeah. I didn't fancy that 7 a.m. gig.
Yeah, I know. I was hungover, and I did warn her as well that I'd be hungover. Yeah. And you know, she even said, you know, your co-host Will thinks this about, you know, David Moyes and the situation, and I just said, look, you know, we have been at odds at that, but the way that a lot of the David Moyes in brigade, so to speak, are going on. Are going on at the moment. It feels just like, and there are a lot of neutrals that are kind of buying into this narrative as well. It feels just like, you know, they're saying, well, there is no other manager out there that can succeed like David Moyes ever. That's it.
Well, Lopetegui isn't it, is he?
Well, yeah, I'm not saying that Lopetegui's the answer, but we cannot go on and keep going, oh, yeah, well, you know, David Moyes. Are we going to be still going on about David Moyes in 30 years' time?
If we don't achieve what we did or get anywhere near to under him, yes.
Yeah, but, you know, at the end of the day, Lopetegui hasn't worked. It's not. I don't think it is going to work now. I was hopeful that it would, but I don't think it will. Okay? So, but that doesn't mean that the next guy that comes in isn't going to work. And he's the one that's going to take it, or it could be three managers down the line. But that also doesn't mean the fact that we should have stuck with David Moyes on the decline that we were in the second half of last season.
Well, no, but the point is that if you're going to this completely disregards the idea that if we'd have what I think it would have required, right, from David Sullivan, and I think did you see the David Moyes thing on the overlap?
I did see that. Yeah, I listened to it.
Yeah. So if anyone who hasn't seen it, David Moyes was on the overlap. And he said that after we beat Arsenal on December the 28th, I think it was, last season, which cemented our highest ever points total at the halfway point of a Premier League season, he was offered a new contract. David Moyes says he wasn't sure whether he should stay and that also the contract wasn't great. His words, not mine. And then that 3 games later, after we had a poor run of form, it may have been 3 defeats, that David Sullivan took the contract off the table. Now, that's one side of the story. We won't hear anything from David Sullivan. But also, David Moyes, not the sort of man to over-exaggerate stuff typically anyway. And like you're going out on a bit of a limb to say something like that publicly and risk, a former owner or whatever it might be, hitting back, be it directly or indirectly via journalistic sources, whatever, right? So I don't think it's a huge leap to go, yeah, that probably happened. That was sort of stories that we were sort of hearing at the time anyway. Now that is not an example of of a well-run football club. Oh, I'm probably strong in it, but of a football club who knows where they're going with a mid to long-term strategy. Is it? Who've got a like if a poor run of 3 games is going to cause you to withdraw a contract offer for a manager, that isn't indicative of a club or an ownership or whatever who have got a strong idea of what the club's football identity is or is going to be mid to long term, right? And I think that's what I think Joe's point he makes there, right? Where he says also that the Lopetegui was the wrong man argument, which I'm hearing from all over the place now, is a moot point, as many of the Moyes outers hate Sullivan too, right? Thinking he'd get the appointment right is completely naive. And I think that's where it comes from, as I've said already, Jonesy, really, where to call so vociferously for David Moyes to go shows, in my opinion, like a complete lack of those people having any of like what would be a sensible amount of caution, given it's like, well, you know what the club has typically been like. I'm not full of confidence that there's an idea of oh, this is the brand and style of football we're going to play. This is this club's football identity, and therefore this is the appointment strategy when it comes to managers, or recruitment strategy when it comes to managers and players, that feeds into that overall idea, right? It's some sort of classic business stuff, really, isn't it? You have a long-term strategy of what you want to do, where you want to be, how you want to achieve it, and then you appoint accordingly. Yeah. That's what I think. I think that's never really been there that much. Since, David Gold and David Sullivan bought the club, it's kind of been lurching from one style, one manager to another. And we've just stumbled across a couple of success stories in Slaven Bilic and then David Moyes. Now, so to completely ignore the idea that we can get rid of David Moyes, but what could come afterwards, either in the first, second, or third manager, might not be better than what we've had. It just seems an odd thing for someone to not consider that, and I think that's the point Joe's making.
I get that argument. I think, but on the complete flip side, okay, David Moyes gets a new contract, but he still only wins 3 Premier League games post New Year last year. He still gets that new contract and he signs a new deal.
Yeah,
and then we go into this season and we've won 3 of our first 11 Premier League games, which is our current form right now. What happens? Did everyone go, yeah, but he did win us European Cup 2 years ago, so we'll stick by him?
But it wouldn't have been this bad under Moyes. It wouldn't. I'm sorry, it wouldn't.
Well, it was this bad in the second half of last season, mate.
Yeah, this is the first half we're in.
Yeah, but the form was there.
He's great at starting seasons, mate. It's the energy runs out. He gets crap towards the end of the season.
Come on, it's the same form. It's just a different manager in charge. It's the same form. So this manager's come in and we've gone, right, well, we need you to fix it. And he hasn't. Okay, fine. Let's get someone else in to see if they can do it. I agree with the lack of strategy and the lack of mid to long term planning. I completely agree with that. But to say that things would have 100% been 100% different under David Moyes this season, when considering the fact that the second half of last year was so terrible, it was relegation.
It weren't as bad as this. It weren't as bad as this.
Mate, we won 3 games in 19. We've won 3 in 11 already this season. Not including the European games, to be fair. I'm talking about the league. So to say, oh well, if we'd stuck with David Moyes, we wouldn't be in this situation. I disagree. There's a high chance we would have been. There's a high chance we would have been because of the way that last season ended. For me, it needed to change. It had gone. His time at West Ham had run its course, and I think he'd taken us as far as he could. I said the day after that, in Prague, when we did that live show in Prague, I said, I wonder whether it's the right time for him now to resign, because I cannot see it getting any better than this. and it didn't. We had one. We
It
had
did
a good
for
start.
6 months.
Well, but we had having a good run of a good run in the league
Half
for
a
6
season
months.
is
Doesn't top winning a European trophy, and that's what I mean by that. Like, it's
no,
not
but domestically it's never been as good, had it?
Yeah, but a season isn't 6 months long; it's a whole season long.
No, true, yeah.
So that's what I meant was he probably, if I were him, I'd resign now, die a hero, and he didn't. And fair enough, he felt like he could go on, and it didn't work out like that. And then now we're hearing about the whole contract offer. But I don't agree with the fact that, if we'd have stuck with David Moyes, what we're going through now wouldn't be happening. The second,
but that's subjective, isn't it? We're arguing
the second half of the
over.
season suggests it points more towards the fact that we would be.
I disagree, because he's proven that he's better at the beginning of seasons, isn't he? I totally agree with you, right? Over David Moyes' reign, and even when it was good, it all tailed off, didn't it? Right? We were agreed on that. So that's what I'm saying. I think it makes Lopetegui look worse, because he's come in, he's got the players he wanted. Like, he had a decent chunk of the summer, and it's it just hasn't got off the ground, right? So we're agreed, right? Before we get too stuck on this one, how many managers do we have to go through, and the clubs don't get anywhere near the success we achieved under Moyes before you think, perhaps it was a bad decision? How many seasons do we need to come 14th for before you go, you know what, actually, yeah, perhaps it would have been. I'm not saying it would have been as good as he'd done before, but how many seasons like this, how many versions of Pellegrini and now Lopetegui is going to be one of them? Like, let's call it, there's no comeback from this, is there? The Andoni Iraola point you made a while ago is the only thing that's been keeping me from going both barrels, get him out. It's not getting any better, is it? Like, someone made a good point on Twitter the other day. No fans got any emotional attachment to him. He hasn't made any friends with the fans so far. He hasn't done himself any favours. By all accounts, lots of the players aren't enjoying playing under him either. Like, this one's dead. So how many managers do we go through, or how long does it have to take for us to get back to, if we ever do, the sort of heights we saw under David Moyes before you go, actually, yeah, perhaps we should have stuck with it?
Before I admit that David Moyes is the only manager to ever be able to succeed at the club, is that what you're saying?
No, but effectively,
that's where we're going, because it's what I said on the radio the other day. To think that David Moyes is the only answer ever in the club's history moving forward.
Yeah, so how many managers then?
It's ridiculous. I don't know how many managers. It's not.
But you also don't know who we would appoint even now, do you?
Well, no one knows that. No one knows that, really. No one knows. Who do we appoint? I don't know. I genuinely don't know the answer to that. Question.
But then, so it's not that weird to think that David Moyes would have been the best option then, is it? It's not that weird to go, well, someone who's proved they can succeed within this environment.
I never said it was weird. I just said that to think that he is the only option and was only the only other option.
You can't think of a better one.
Yeah, but no. To me, not thinking of a better one doesn't mean to think that I don't think that we still shouldn't have made a change. I'm not the one making the decision on who the replacement is. Like,
no, but I know. But you are a West Ham podcaster, so it sort of pays to have an opinion.
I mean, I'm not going to start going out there like some have and gone, get Allegri in. Why not? He's great.
Or like some people did last season and say Lopetegui's the man.
Well, I mean, it's just
and then pretend they didn't.
Yeah, exactly. But then everyone keeps saying Graham Potter to me. Natalie always said it to me on the radio, and I just said, "Well, no, like, initially I thought, yeah, maybe he is the guy, because he did such a good job at Brighton, but
well-run Brighton,
but he failed at
Chelsea. Football identity.
He failed at Chelsea, where that club is just as chaotic as our club off the pitch,
just with more money. Yeah,
what does it tell you? Like, he can't work amid chaos. So I don't think he is the right man.
No.
I don't know. It sounds ridiculous, and I don't want it to happen, but I could see it happening. I mean, when you talk about clubs and chaos and managers and chaos, I mean, Jose Mourinho is like screaming at me, going, "He's going to be the next West Ham manager." I'm not saying I want it to happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but you know, the guy could come in. He loves working in a chaotic atmosphere.
Give me Jose any day of the week.
Because he brings our thing. The thing with Jose is that you only get him for 3 years.
Don't care.
Don't care.
Fine. Yeah.
Maybe even 2. But you guarantee to win a trophy with it, which is great.
Unless you're Tottenham.
Love. But yeah, mate, I genuinely don't know the answer to it. Someone put a list up of the current free agent managers, because let's be
I saw. I didn't look at that.
Free agent. And
who's on there?
Let me see if I can find it. I've probably lost it now. It was here. No, I've lost it. I'll never find it again. You know what Twitter's like these days. Elon Musk has ruined it. But yeah, there was also an article in the Guardian last week about apparently we've started doing our homework on 3 managers. One was the former Denmark manager, the one he resigned in the summer, Hoyland or something like
Say that again. Sorry. What's your name?
The 3 managers we've been doing some background checks on. One was the former Denmark manager. He resigned in the summer. The one
Hjulmand.
Hjulmand, yeah. If you look at his managerial record, it's apart from decent record as Denmark manager, is actually pretty woeful at club level. Then you got who's the guy at Stuttgart at the moment, doing an absolute worldie of a job, but he's not going to leave. It doesn't matter what his name is because he's not going to leave Stuttgart.
Well, that's what I mean.
Finished second in the Bundesliga last year, a year after just about keeping them up, and then he was in the Champions League. And the other guy was Roger Schmidt, who actually, if you look at his record, he's never left the club with lower than 60% win ratio.
Right.
And he's managed.
Who's he managed?
He's managed by Leverkusen. He's just left Benfica after winning them the title. I think when he joined Benfica 3 years ago, he went on a run of like 28 games unbeaten. He's managed PSV. He's managed one of the Red Bull clubs. So, like, the geezer's he knows how to win football matches, and he's a free agent. But he doesn't fit the profile of what a lot of fans want. Is young and foreign. He's foreign,
mate,
but he's not young.
Stop listening to fans. Stop. So we learned nothing.
That was a dig, a little bit of a dig on some people that only want that type of profile.
Right.
But yeah, apparently we've been doing our background checks on those 3 managers. Whether anything comes from that, I don't know. But yeah, mate, I don't know. The fact is that I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know who it should be. But I reject the opinion that David Moyes is the only manager to ever be able to succeed at West Ham. It's just not true.
Well, yeah. I mean, the only manager to have ever succeeded at West Ham is under the current West Ham in its current form. That's what's important to remember. West Ham in its current form. And by that I mean with the owners we've got, with the way the club's set up, the stadium, the fan base, all that sort of stuff, right? In its current form, the only people who've proved they can succeed within that framework are David Moyes and Slaven Bilic. Slaven Bilic was a flash in the pan. It wasn't sustained. I think it's a very, very, very difficult task to succeed at West Ham, and to the same sort of levels we've seen the last few years, domestic success plus European as well. I think that's a very difficult thing to do for a manager, and I think the pool of people who can succeed with the current, taking everything into consideration. Now, I don't just mean the owners there, by the way. That's not a veiled dig. It's more the entire setup, right? And I mean that. The stadium, the fan base, the mindset of the fan base, how split it is, the ideas of grandeur that some have. And, there's a very mixed opinion. I mean everything, right? Amount of money spent, set up at a club, blah, blah, blah. What players think of us, our ability to recruit, all of those sort of things. I think it's a very difficult thing. So I think the pool's very small, because I think you have to have a large skill set, as well as what you might think from a football perspective. You have to have a load of other, what I've called sort of invisible skills. I think David Moyes had in abundance. that I don't think fans really see. Managing upwards, managing a team like that, the sort of egos you've got, managing fan expectation. Not just. I think that's sort of part of the problem. A little bit of David Sullivan. I get it, right? He's got so much grief in the past. He's probably far more beholden to fans than many fans think. I think he actually holds a lot more weight in what the fans think, and the vocal fans particularly think, than fans actually think he does. I think fans think he holds, or lots of fans think he holds them in total contempt. And I actually think it's probably the opposite, because of all the grief he's had before, where I think he probably puts a bit too much sway into what the fans think, because sometimes football fans do not know what is best for a football club, do they? Because they only see it through the fan lens, right? They're not seeing the whole thing. And that's why I think, actually, not just because I liked him, but I think it would have actually been a really bold thing to do last season, to offer David Moyes a proper contract and go, look, I know he's not universally popular, but I'm not risking. I believe that, David Moyes, if we back him again, he can go again. He's got the energy, and I'm behind him, and it's my football club. And, he's delivered some great times. There's some not good times as well. There's some room for improvement, which David's aware of, and he knows what we expect. But I'm going to go again and go big and go hard. And I would have actually respected him for that. And I mean, I wouldn't with Lopetegui now, because it's so terrible. But I think you need a bit of that sometimes. And I wonder what you think, because I think it's interesting, the Sullivan and fans thing, because I think more than at lots of other clubs, he is actually a bit more in tune and acting as a result of fan feeling, which I think is actually to his detriment, because now no one's now patting him on the back, are they, going, oh, well done for getting rid of David Moyes, that's what we all wanted, not all of us, but the Moyes out, that's what we wanted, so well done for doing that. Look, don't worry, it hasn't worked out, that's not your fault. Like, they just, everything's his fault in their eyes, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, where David Sullivan's concerned, and we all know that a lot of the stick he's had in the past he's thoroughly deserved. I think the stick he's getting at the moment, and I think you're right, he probably does that, bows down to what the fans want more often than not, so that he can go, well, that's what you wanted, that's what you wanted me to do, so I've done it. Because there's been a lot of things that he's done where the fans didn't want him to do it, he did it anyway. We don't have to go through that. There's one.
No, yeah, quite.
One big
the stadium we play in.
Yeah. So he's probably gone too far the other way. But one thing I wanted to say was, I don't understand why he's the one getting the stick at the moment.
Couldn't agree more.
I heard a guy on the radio.
I assume you mean Steidten should be.
I think there is an element of blame towards him, but I don't think we really know to the full extent whether whose choice Lopetegui was, whether it was Steidten or Sullivan or a mixture of the two. But that's
of course it's
both.
But it's ridiculous. Like, the sporting director would be brought in and then have no say. Like, it's just silly. He might have. It's easy for him to go. Steidten's been briefing. Oh, I want or not. Yeah, but the briefing is among journalists that Steidten wanted Amorim. It's like, all right, but the club weren't willing to pay the money. Yeah, exactly. Amorim probably was never going to come anyway. He's now got the Man United job. So once we've got the unrealistic target out of the way, that it's easy to say you wanted now, like, Lopetegui was next on, like, or was next / high up on the list. Like, that's how it works.
I heard a guy on the radio the other day, and it feels like, because of the situation that we found ourselves in, automatically Sullivan's the man to blame. And he said that, he doesn't spend any money, he's scrimping and saving. And in my head, I'm like, look,
it's loads of money.
For all of Sullivan's faults, and there are a lot, to accuse the man of not spending any money just 2 months after transfer windows closed, in which he spent over £150 million, right? And I think it's now
127 net spend, I think.
Is it 4 consecutive summers where we spent over 100 million quid on players?
Exactly, yeah.
So to the fans that keep turning around and going, oh, Sullivan, he doesn't spend enough money, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Right, you don't know what you're talking about. You're wrong.
Definitely.
Right? Is he the right man? Is he the right owner that we want in charge of the football club long term? No, I think we're all in agreement that we would all.
But it could be loads worse, mate.
It could be loads worse.
Modern day Sullivan's better than olden day Sullivan.
100%.
It could be loads
club,
worse.
The club financially is in a very, very healthy position at the moment.
Yep.
We've seen the accounts. We see where we rank with all the other clubs across Europe for revenue. Yep. We're up there. We're very, from a pure business point of view, we are a well-run football club from a business point of view.
Yeah, we're far more stable than we were when it took over.
Yeah. But, I think a lot of clubs would, for what I mean by him probably should be selling up, is that you want someone to be able to have that long-term vision or the mid to long-term vision and have that strategy in place, because it's clear it's not there. You touched on it earlier, and I do agree with that. But to constantly hark back, as soon as any hint that things aren't going the way the fans want, suddenly it's Sullivan's fault again. I don't like that, because it's not. No one was giving credit either. No one praised him for the money. What a lot of fans wanted in the summer, and that was get rid of David Moyes. Yeah. Okay, David Moyes' replacement hasn't worked.
It's such a cop-out to go, well, this isn't the way I wanted David Moyes to go. It's well, you can't have it both ways.
You don't own the football
you've got
club.
to accept this was part of the risk.
Yeah, you don't own the football club. You never will own the football club. So therefore, it's not always going to go the way you want it to go. You're not going to get, you're not going to sign every player that you want to sign. You're not going to have every manager.
If you want to cough up 800 million to buy it off him, feel free. But until then,
feel free. Yeah. Maybe speak to the bank next week. See if you can get a loan. But yeah, I don't know. I just
imagine that.
Yeah.
It's 800 million I'm looking to borrow.
As much as I would like David Sullivan to sell the football club, or at least seek new investment, and dilute his power at the club.
But he has done that. Kretinsky's there, and so is Steidten.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, Steidten isn't a shareholder, is he? He's just a technical director.
No, but he's diluted his power by bringing him in.
But I mean by diluted shareholding. I think I mean by that.
Which he again has done with Kretinsky.
But yeah, I think, but he's still majority shareholder. He still holds the keys. Yeah. He's still the top dog. I want him to do that, and a lot of fans do, but I do not buy into this whole everything that goes wrong is definitely his fault. He doesn't spend any money and this, that, and the other. It's rubbish. It's not true.
Couldn't agree more.
And this current situation that we're in, yes, okay, he made the appointment. Under the whole decision making was also Tim Steidten. The current situation at the club is Julen Lopetegui. He's not getting those players playing football. David Sullivan's not the one in the dressing room doing the team talks.
Steidten, the one, I think, is, to be fair.
He just whacked 150 million quid on the desk of Lopetegui and Steidten. I mean, go and spend that, boys.
Yeah.
So it's not Sullivan's fault. This is not Sullivan's fault. You can blame Sullivan for the stadium move. You can blame him for God knows what else.
Yeah, some of the drab years prior to Moyes too. Yeah.
Yeah, this isn't his fault, and that's it.
Yeah. No, you make an excellent point there, James. That'll be an unpopular one. I think we'll get Alex to put that out on socials. Right. Mulligan's Irons, James. Regular listener to the podcast, regular messenger. Yeah. To the podcast as well, right? So this is Saturday evening after the Everton game. Right, as I've said to you guys, this might have been pre-Saturday. No, this is post the game, right? Aside from the last 5 minutes in each half, we were the poorer side at home against the only club in the league that could be argued to be worse run than our own. How you play Everton at home and don't get a shot off till the 44th minute and you're happy to set up to allow that is a joke. And if you're going to play like a team, like a Timu version of Moyes and allow them to have the shots and the ball, Somerville's looking like a gem in the making, and seeing him track back and show genuine heart is brilliant. But I have huge concerns where Paqueta's head is at 3 to 4 times while Everton were in our box, all getting ready to cross it, to be just sat outside with zero interest in marking his man or getting in any sort of position to help to be ready to start a counter. At this rate, if Newcastle can finish it, could be an ugly game followed by Arsenal. If Newcastle could finish or can finish, it will be an ugly game followed by Arsenal. Before we all start calling for Julen's head, who can we get that's better? What style do we want to play, and who is a realistic West Ham target? Well, I think we've probably covered that just now. To be fair, Mulligan's Irons here. Right, Ryan Baker. He's the one who's getting into me before James. The 6th of October. I don't know what game that would have been after. Probably, I don't know, Ipswich. Yeah, Ipswich it was. Who said to me then, come on, lad, surely a bit of positivity after that display. Blah, blah, blah. Saturday night, he's messaged, what a load of rubbish. I've just stood in the cold and watched. No excuses, huge lack of effort and desire. Terrible. Ryan's changed his tune there. Michael Wood says, sounds like it feels like a mess by the ownership to me. That was in response to the David Moyes overlap thing. And Mark Scott as well, right? I started the podcast last week with a quote from Mark. Where will you find your negativity this week, Will, was what he messaged straight after the Man United game. And I was ill, so that's why I couldn't come on and do a positive podcast. But I started last week's podcast with that quote from Mark. And he's not afraid ever in giving me a bit of stick, is Mark. So you've made quite the assumption from that one comment, Will. My point was that last season you would have hailed that win over Man United. This season you've sought out the negatives in the victory. I certainly don't believe anything has changed. Yes, I believe the Moyes era had run its course and I did want change, but Lopetegui was not the change that I wanted. Well, that's the bit that rankles. It's like, you don't get to say that. You don't get to say that last season. The club is a shambles as it stands, with no direction and no identity. I've turned the second oldest squad in the Premier League into the oldest, with some dubious recruitment over the summer and some very poor decisions. I.e. not signing John Duran. The truth is the club is rotten from the top down and we'll always have issues all the time. The ownership is held by Sullivan. And then he says, get well soon, because I wasn't very well last week. So I appreciate that, Mark. And I went back to him. And as always, we're always happy to receive cordial messages that disagree or agree with either James or I. I do think we've covered a lot of that stuff, Jonesy, right? Joe's message was obviously the one that kicked it off. Pleased to hear from everyone else, as we always are on all of our social media platforms. Please do keep getting in touch, because I think that's all we're going to have content wise for the next few weeks. I think it's absolutely terrible and I don't think it's getting any better. I can't see us getting anything out the next few weeks, and even if we do, and that's what I would have felt about Everton, I just feel now is the time to talk about the club holistically and the bigger picture and the general direction it's going. I don't think the odd win we might nick here or there is all of a sudden going to be indicative that everything's all right, which is exactly how I felt after the Man United game. So, all right, they missed a hatful of chance in the first half. We get a dodgy VAR decision and get a win from that. I don't know. Where do we go from here then, James? I mean, doesn't sound like they are going to sack him now. Be a decent old payoff if they did. But what? Yeah, I mean, you haven't got any ideas for any replacements. It's all a bit bleak.
I'm genuinely worried for Newcastle and Arsenal up next. I think national break. Partly another reason why I'd rather them just make a change now. You might get that.
But honestly, what do you do? What do you do?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know.
But you have to, if not you, but if the club are going to do that, they have, which again, everyone's doubting their forward planning last summer when they got rid of Moyes. If you're going to do it now,
you're led to believe that, given that report I mentioned earlier, they are doing their homework on a few alternatives. There will also be names that were on the list in the summer below Lopetegui, potentially, that they might still want to revisit. Maybe the names that they're looking at now were on the list. I don't know, but the concern is, and this is probably why they won't sack him now. The concern is that they've got no idea themselves. They're just like, well, God knows, we might as well just stick with it until we do know. But yeah,
can you imagine can we just imagine just for a sec, right? Just humour me just for a minute. right? News comes out tomorrow. One of the reputable journalists, David Moyes, has been contacted over a return to West Ham for a short-term contract until the end of the season, where the club just want to stabilise before they consider moving in a new direction. AKA exactly what he did the last few years at club. Just imagine that Moyes has got he's no way he'd come back. No. But just imagine that comes out tomorrow. The club have got the brass neck to do it, right? Well, how do you react to that? Beyond incredulity that's happening. Would you consider that to be the best thing for the club short term?
No, I think that would be an incredibly embarrassing thing to happen. I thought the second time we did it, you brought him back. What's the point? I know it ended up being a really good choice in the end, but I don't know. It would astound me that the club would even go down that route. I would like to think that David Moyes has got a little bit more pride and just turn around and go, "Do one, Dave." I'm not interested. It won't happen. I don't know what happened, because don't forget the fact that there was a lot of fans that wanted him out. If they went back to him, there would be unrest, wouldn't there? There would be unrest.
I don't know if they would at the moment. That's the thing, because I think everyone's united behind getting Lopetegui out, right? I think everyone's there now. The fact that you're now there, you were the last bastion of anyone semi-reasonable. Yeah, exactly. So I honestly think people would just be head in hands. Don't know what's going on here.
But it'd also be typical West Ham, like I mentioned earlier, the chaos, sort of stuff we do, isn't it? Has anyone ever managed a club 3 times before? Yeah, it's definitely happened.
Yeah, I can't. Who?
Yeah, I don't
Probably,
know, but
I don't know in the old days.
In my head, but yeah, it would have definitely happened. I think didn't someone I saw?
Let's have a look.
I saw maybe it was Tom Rennie who was talking about it. Said something like,
"Oh yeah,
maybe it was him." He said that there's a manager in Germany,
right?
That just he only ever goes back to the club and the manager doesn't work. He just goes back, saves them, and then leaves again. And then the next appointment doesn't work, and then he comes back, saves them, and then leaves again. And it's just like a vicious cycle. He just keeps coming back to save them.
Which Jimmy Cyril managed Notts County in 3 spells from 1969 to 75, then 78 to 82, and then 85 to 87. I've just clicked on a Guardian article. Martin Allen. Who's that? Would that be Barnet? Would it? Probably, yeah. Martin Allen's managed Barnet 5 times.
There you go.
Oh, that's absolutely amazing. All right, Fleetwood manager John Sheridan has managed Oldham 5 times, but loses on the technicality of 2 of those tenures being caretaker. Who else we got here? 3. 3 appears to be the optimum. Jimmy Cyril, Jim Gannon was at the time of this article at his 3rd spell at Stockport County. Howard Kendall with Everton, 1981 to 87, then 1990 to 93, and then 97 to 98. I mean, there we go. We've got quite a few here. None that you've never heard of, to be fair. A few in Europe and Italy. I mean, I'm all for it, mate. Moyes 3.0.
No thanks.
He will have learnt loads of lessons from his first 2 spells, won't he? And he'll know how to approach it even bigger and better this time. We'll win the Europa League.
Buy a striker, build a bigger squad. Yeah. Maybe they're the lessons. If he learns those lessons,
you'd have him back.
I'm not 100% against it, but I just don't think he will.
Right. That's as good as I'm going to get out of James Jones for this week. So we'll call it a day there, I think. I hope you don't mind us not doing much of a review on the game. I just don't think there's any point. Nothing. No. Chris Sunville, I love him. I'm sorry for ever suggesting that he might be similar to Saeed Benrahma, because he's wicked. He properly cares about the club. He's already done more running than Ben Ramraz, who's so unlucky to hit the post. He would have well deserved that goal to get the winner. He looks absolutely mustard, and I want to see him in that starting lineup every week. Basically, he looks far more into it and invested in it than basically anyone else on the pitch, but particularly than Lucas Paqueta. Obviously, Kudus will get in when he's back. So yeah, big props to Crescencio Somerville. Yeah, I just think now's the time. What's the point of reviewing the game? I mean, we could do a bit more of that, but I think everyone seems more than happy with the holistic conversation. I think that's where conversation is at with West Ham at the moment. James, been absolutely brilliant speaking to you again, mate. Lovely to see you. International break, what a pleasant rest that'll be. Yeah, so you won't hear from us until ahead of the next Premier League game, which is Newcastle, isn't it, Jonesy?
Yeah, Newcastle away week after next.
Newcastle away.
It's a Monday night, which is
grim, that, isn't it? Yeah. That is a long old journey.
Lots of fans.
Yeah, Alex Smith will no doubt be doing that one. He loves a rogue midweek game that we're definitely going to lose after we went up for the Liverpool game as well. Right, thanks for listening, everyone. We'll catch you after the international break, yet another one. Yeah, let us know if you agree or disagree with all of it. Any specific things that either me or James have said, get involved in the DMs. If you've listened to that and you've got some thoughts, now's your time before you skip on to your next podcast. Get all up in our DMs on social media. Instagram's probably your best bet, to be honest. We are West Ham Pod on Instagram. At @WeAre_West Ham on Twitter. Do us a favour, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We Are West Ham Podcast on YouTube. You get some clips, and I think you can watch the whole of these episodes in video form now, James, can't you? Alex has been putting those up. So yeah, We Are West Ham Podcast on YouTube as well. You can email us at wearewesthampod@gmail.com. Yeah, that's about it. Buy us a pint if you want. buymeacoffee.com/wearewestham, as Jim so kindly did recently. You can still do that, and we are going to launch his subscription thing, by the way. It's turned out to be a total ball ache to get it done, but James is on the case, so I'm not going to promise anything anymore. Fingers crossed after the international break. If not, yeah, we'll let you know when we do. Thanks for listening. Get stuck in the DMs, in the comments, whatever. Let us know what you think, good or bad, by all means. But if anyone, what would be interesting, if anyone still thinks you should give Lopetegui some time, tell us why that is and what you're seeing. That means we should. Thanks for listening, everyone. West Ham are massive. That's getting harder and harder to say at the end of every podcast. But we are everywhere we go. Up the hammers, we'll speak to you after the international break.